My stepsister ruined my engagement with a paternity test. My fiancé swore he didn't know. But the messages she kept for 5 years revealed he knew from the beginning he was the father and lied to me throughout our entire relationship. I'm 27 years old. I work in digital marketing. And honestly, I never thought my life would turn into this absolute disaster. But here we are. Like 8 months ago, my engagement exploded in the most humiliating way possible, and I'm still processing everything that happened because, truth be told, it's the kind of drama you don't even see in the most ridiculous soap operas. I guess I should start from the beginning, or at least from where things started to go wrong, which technically was years ago, but I had no idea until everything came to light. My name is Charlotte, and until recently, I was living with my fiancé Jacob, a guy I met like 4 years ago at a work conference and who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. He was an architect, 30 years old, handsome, stable, everything you're supposed to look for. We got engaged a year and a half ago and we're planning a wedding for this summer. My family is a bit complicated. My dad remarried when I was like 15, after my parents got divorced, and with my stepmother came Amanda, my stepsister, who's 5 years older than me, and who I never had a super close relationship with, but not a bad one either. Or so I thought. Amanda was always kind of dramatic and getting into trouble. She married young to a guy named Brian, had a son named Oliver, who's now 5 years old, and then divorced Brian like 3 years ago for reasons that were never very clear, but according to her, it was because he was a loser. The thing is that Jacob and I decided to throw an engagement party in March. Nothing too big, but we wanted to celebrate with family and close friends, like 40 people maximum. I sent an invitation to Amanda, obviously, because even though we weren't super close, well, she's my stepsister, and you're supposed to do those things, right? She told me she couldn't come because she had plans with Oliver that weekend, which seemed weird to me because normally she would have moved heaven and earth to go to a party with an open bar, but whatever. I didn't think much of it. The party was at an event venue we rented. Nothing fancy, but nice. And it was full of people who love us, and we were having an amazing time. Literally the best day of my life up to that point. And then Amanda showed up. She didn't knock, didn't give warning. She just walked in like nothing, with Oliver holding her hand and a face I had never seen on her, like determination mixed with rage. I remember the music was playing and I was dancing with Jacob when suddenly I heard my stepmother scream Amanda's name, and when I turned around there, she was walking straight toward us. My first thought was, well, how nice that she changed her mind and came, but something in her body language told me this wasn't going to be a friendly visit. She stood in front of Jacob and me, and I swear the whole room went silent, like in the movies when something dramatic happens and the universe decides it needs your full attention. Amanda pulled an arcus envelope from her purse, one of those manila envelopes that look super official, and put it in Jacob's hands. He looked at her confused and asked her what this was, and she, with the coldest voice I've ever heard in my life, said loudly for everyone to hear, "It's a paternity test that confirms you are the biological father of my son." I froze. I literally felt like my brain had shut down and rebooted 3 times trying to process what I had just heard. People around started murmuring, and I could only look at Jacob, who had the whitest face I've ever seen, like paper, and was looking at the envelope like it was a bomb about to explode. Oliver was standing there next to his mom, not understanding anything. The poor kid had like a lollipop in his hand and was watching everything confused. And I just kept thinking, this can't be happening. This has to be a nightmare or a bad joke. But Amanda kept talking. She said that Jacob and she had had an encounter almost 6 years ago, that he knew perfectly well who she was because they had seen each other at a family dinner when he and I had only been together for like 6 months, and that he had been avoiding her all this time. Jacob started denying everything, said yes. They had had a one-night stand years ago, but he had no idea a child existed, that she never told him anything, and this was completely new to him. The party obviously turned into total chaos. My mom and stepdad were trying to calm the situation. Jacob's friends took him out of the room so he could breathe, and I just stood there like an idiot, not knowing what to do or what to say. Amanda left after her scene, taking Oliver with her, and I spent the rest of the night locked in the bathroom crying while I heard people leaving. When I finally came out, Jacob was sitting at one of the tables with his head in his hands, and he swore to me on everything sacred that he didn't know anything about that child, that yes, he had had that encounter with Amanda years ago, when he and I were having a crisis and had separated temporarily for like 2 months, but that she never told him she was pregnant and he assumed they had just moved on with their lives. The next few days were hell. I stayed in the house but barely spoke to Jacob. I didn't know whether to believe him or not, and my head was a mess of contradictory thoughts. On one hand, the Jacob I knew wasn't the type of person who would abandon a child, but on the other hand, how was it possible that Amanda had kept this secret for 5 years? Nothing made sense. I decided to do something I probably should have done from the beginning. I looked up Brian's number, Amanda's ex-husband, because if anyone had information, it was him. When I talked to Brian, it was like opening Pandora's box. He told me he had been paying child support for Oliver since the divorce, that he always assumed he was his biological son because Amanda told him he was, and he never questioned anything because, well, they were married when the child was born. But after what happened at the party, Brian started putting 2 and 2 together and got a paternity test on his own. The results confirmed that he was not Oliver's biological father, and he was absolutely furious because he had been paying child support for years for a child who wasn't his. He told me he was going to sue Amanda for paternity fraud and that I should prepare myself because this was going to get ugly. And boy, did it get ugly. Brian took the case to court almost immediately, and Amanda went into total panic. She started calling me, my mom, anyone who would listen, saying that Jacob knew from the beginning that he had been avoiding her all this time, that he was an irresponsible father who needed to take care of his son. The pressure on Jacob was unbearable. My family was demanding he take the paternity test to confirm Amanda's accusations. His own parents were devastated and confused, and I just didn't know what to believe anymore. Finally, after weeks of constant drama, Jacob agreed to take the official test. The results came like 3 weeks later, and confirmed what Amanda had been saying from the beginning. Jacob was Oliver's biological father, with 99.98% certainty. When I saw those papers, I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. All the life we had planned together, the wedding, the children we wanted to have, everything crumbled in that moment. Jacob tried to talk to me, explain that he really didn't know, that Amanda never told him anything. But I couldn't trust anything he said anymore. I moved to a friend's house because I couldn't even look at him without feeling like I was drowning. Meanwhile, Brian's case moved forward, and things got worse and worse for Amanda. The judge ordered CPS to investigate the situation because there was evidence of paternity fraud and possible negligence. Social workers went to Amanda's house, interviewed Oliver, reviewed everything, and determined that the environment wasn't safe for the child due to the legal and emotional chaos Amanda had created. They took temporary custody away from Amanda, and, since Brian was no longer considered the legal father, Oliver was placed with my mom and stepdad because they were the closest available relatives who passed the background checks. This caused another level of family drama, because my mom and stepdad, especially my stepdad, initially took Amanda's side. They said Jacob was irresponsible, that I should support my stepsister in this difficult time, that Oliver needed his family. But I was so angry with everyone that I basically cut contact with them too. I couldn't believe they expected me to forgive all this like nothing, as if my engagement hadn't been publicly destroyed, as if my trust hadn't been completely betrayed. Then, when I thought things couldn't get worse, another bomb came to light. During the CPS investigation and Brian's legal process, they discovered that Amanda had been committing paternity fraud not with one, but with 2 men. Turns out there was another guy, a guy named Steven who had also been paying child support for Oliver, believing he was his son. Apparently Amanda had been playing with multiple men at the same time, telling each one he was the father, and collecting child support checks from both while Brian was paying too. It was like a complete fraud scheme that had been running for years. Steven obviously also got a paternity test when he found out about everything, and he wasn't the biological father either, so now there were 2 men suing Amanda for fraud and restitution. The total amount she owed Brian and Steven was like $80,000 or something like that, not counting legal fees and fines the state was going to impose on her. Amanda's life was completely falling apart. She lost her job because the scandal reached her bosses. She was about to lose her house because she couldn't pay the legal expenses, and Oliver was still with my parents because nobody knew what was going to happen with her. Jacob and I, meanwhile, tried couples therapy to see if we could save anything of our relationship. I wanted to believe he didn't know. I really wanted to believe it, because the alternative meant I had spent 4 years with someone who was capable of lying to me that way. The therapy sessions were exhausting. We talked in circles about trust and betrayal and responsibility, and I felt like we weren't getting anywhere. He insisted he was a victim in all this too, that Amanda had manipulated him, that she never gave him the chance to be part of Oliver's life. But then something happened that changed everything again. Amanda showed up at my apartment. Well, at my friend's apartment where I was staying, like 2 months after the party disaster. She managed to get the address, I don't know how, and when I opened the door, there she was. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in weeks, and started yelling at me that she needed to talk to Jacob immediately. I told her to leave, that I wasn't going to help her with anything, but she said there were things I needed to know, that Jacob had been lying to me all this time. Turns out Jacob was on his way to my apartment too. We had agreed to meet to talk, so when he arrived, he found Amanda waiting for him. She confronted him in front of me, yelled at him to stop playing innocent, that he knew perfectly well he was Oliver's father for years. Jacob started denying everything as always, but Amanda pulled out her phone and showed him messages. Messages from years ago where she had told him she was pregnant, where she had sent him photos of the newborn baby, where she had begged him to help her financially. Jacob went pale again, that same expression he had at the party, and Amanda kept pressing him. She said that the first time he took me to a family dinner, like 6 months after we started dating, she was there with Oliver, who was barely a baby back then, and that Jacob had seen her, and after dinner, he contacted her and told her they needed to talk. According to Amanda, Jacob had admitted to her then that he knew Oliver was his son because of the timing and because she had told him, but he begged her not to say anything because he had just met me and didn't want to ruin our relationship. He promised he would help her financially discreetly, but then he just disappeared, blocked her numbers, avoided her at all family gatherings, and she was left alone raising the child. I looked at Jacob, expecting him to deny everything, to say Amanda was lying again, but he didn't say anything. He just stood there with tears in his eyes and finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably like 2 minutes, admitted it was true. He said yes, that he had known since that first family dinner that Oliver was his son, that Amanda had confirmed it and he had internally accepted it, but that he was terrified of losing me, that we had just started our relationship and he felt he had finally found the right person for him. He said he was a coward, that he made the selfish decision to disappear and pretend nothing had happened, and that over time, he convinced himself he had done the right thing because Amanda had found Brian and Oliver had a father figure. End in topic. In that moment, something inside me just broke. All the time we had spent in therapy, all the times he had sworn to me he didn't know, all the tears I had shed believing we were victims of Amanda's lies, it was all a lie. Jacob had known from the beginning. He had lied to me for years. He had built our entire relationship on a giant lie and had the nerve to play the victim when everything exploded. I told him to get out of my sight, that I never wanted to see him again, and Amanda also left after getting what she wanted, which was to completely expose him. That night I called my mom and told her everything. I think it was the first time in months we really talked without fighting, and I understood why I had been so angry, why I couldn't just forgive and move on. She helped me coordinate with Jacob so I could get my stuff from the apartment we shared when he wasn't there, and that's what we did. I officially ended the engagement, returned the ring by mail because I couldn't even see him to give it to him in person, and blocked all his attempts to contact me. Amanda's legal case eventually reached its conclusion. The judge decided that Oliver was going to stay with Stephen. The other guy Amanda had scammed, because despite not being the biological father, he had been the most consistent father figure in the child's life for years and wanted to continue raising him. Stephen was a good guy, really, and genuinely loved Oliver, so everyone agreed it was the best option for the child. Amanda lost all her custody rights, though she was allowed supervised visits if she met certain conditions. As for the legal consequences for Amanda, she was convicted of child support fraud and ordered to return all the money she had fraudulently collected from Brian and Stephen, plus interest and legal costs, which added up to an absurd amount she's probably never going to be able to pay completely. They also gave her community service and probation. My stepdad ended up helping her with some of the legal expenses, which caused tension in his marriage with my mom, but well, that's their problem, not mine. It's been like 6 months since all this. I moved to my own apartment, a small studio, but it's completely mine and where I can start over without ghosts from the past. I left my previous job because I couldn't stand that everyone knew what had happened. Got a new position at another marketing company where nobody knows my story. I've been going to individual therapy, which has helped a lot, and little by little I'm rebuilding my life. The relationship with my family is still complicated. I talk to my mom from time to time, but I keep my distance from my stepdad and obviously from Amanda. I haven't seen Oliver since everything happened, which makes me sad because the poor kid wasn't to blame for any of this, and I hope Stephen is giving him a good life. Sometimes I wonder how they explained everything to him, what they told him about why his mom doesn't live with him anymore, but I guess I'll never know, and it's probably better that way. As for Jacob, I heard through others that he's trying to establish some kind of relationship with Oliver through Stephen, but I don't know the details, and honestly, I don't care. That part of my life is closed. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I still think about what my life would be like if none of this had happened. If I had married Jacob without knowing the truth? But then I realize it would have been worse to find out later, when maybe we already had our own children or had been married for years. Last week, a friend asked me if I was ready to start dating someone again, and honestly, I don't know the answer. Part 2 of me wants to try, meet someone new, and start fresh, but another part is still processing the betrayal, and I'm not sure I can trust someone that way again. I guess time will tell. For now, I'm focused on myself, on my work, on building a life that's mine and mine alone, without lies or family drama. And that, for now, is enough.